So how much will you be spending this Christmas? Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, it is that time of the year where J.D. Power releases its latest data on Christmas spending. Jennifer White is my guest today. She is the Senior Director of Banking and Payments Intelligence with J.D. Powers. Jennifer, welcome to Prudent Money.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to have a good conversation.
Great. It's always good to have you on the program, and I gotta give respect its due. You authored this paper. It's a little bit more than Christmas data. I just want to make sure that people know that. And it's the Banking and Payments Intelligence Report, and of course that's published by J.D. Power and authored by Jennifer. We have Jennifer on 5 or 6 times a year, and love to get her input into what's going on with the consumer. You know, without getting into details, talk a little bit about this year's overall results. Did anything surprise you about this year's findings?
You know, it did surprise me. We've spoken before about the state of the U.S. consumer. It's a responsibility and a privilege for me to represent the voice of the consumer to the industry, and that's what J.D. Power does. And so in doing that, we track the status of consumers. And, consumer financial health is holding pretty steady. But what's surprising when we take that information, we know things are tough. Consumers are telling us it's tough, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm in really, much worse financial health at the moment. But when we then pivot and say, but how much are you going to spend for the holidays? We have more customers saying, I'm going to spend no more than what I did last year. And if we take a look at that data by different, financial health status, healthy customers versus unhealthy customers, we see very different patterns in what consumers are willing to do. And the biggest surprise is that the healthiest customers, those with, maybe a little extra money in their account, those that might have access to credit, those that might have, some extra savings for long-term put away, they're telling us in even higher numbers. Almost 3 in 5 of them said they're not going to spend any more this year. So that to us was pretty striking because it tells us that, the number of packages that might be under a tree or the other spending that typically happens around this time of year, the dollar amounts might be increasing, but people aren't bringing more home.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think there's the answer to that question. Where does this come from? This shift? I think it comes from a lot of different things, but I think we're finally getting to an environment where consumers are looking out and they're seeing the storm clouds start to develop, and with the inflation what it is today, I think it gets worse, but it's not as bad right now. I think everything's kind of slowly moving in. You start hearing reports about unemployment being another big issue. So it definitely makes these results interesting. And I learned something today, Jennifer, that there is a Green Monday. I had no idea.
I know. Our thing.
What is that Green Monday?
Yeah. Well, it's another day where consumers are encouraged with sales incentives to purchase, typically online. The idea that it's one of the last days that I think you can purchase with free shipping, I believe,
right.
Because it gets closer and closer to the holiday season. What is happening is that our businesses that we buy all of our goods from are trying to come up with more and more incentives to bring us back to the table, to see as consumers if we have that extra dollar to spend on another item. And the challenge is that, if your healthy customers are saying, I'm not going to spend any more than I did last year, and the unhealthy customers are actually, almost half of the unhealthy customers are saying, I'm actually going to start spending less. that puts those sellers at a disadvantage. They're trying to bring us back when we might not have any money left to spend.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I remember talking about this after 9/11 happened, and the fear was, from after all that we went through all that the consumers just would not spend money because of everything that's happened. And so retailers just got so aggressive at going after the consumers, trying to in competition, driving prices down as low as possible. And it's real interesting when you see the dynamics there. And of course, there's Cyber Tuesday. I guess that used to be Cyber Monday, but that switched up a little bit. And then there's all of the pre-Black Friday sales. I think there's plenty of opportunities to spend money, right?
Exactly. And now we have in the summer, essentially the equivalent of Black Friday sales from some vendors.
In July, in Christmas in July or something like that.
Yeah. I think Amazon calls it their Prime Days. Target has a version of it as well. And so what ends up happening, though, is that if you only have a certain amount of money to spend, and you've been trained that you should spend that money on those days, whether it's in the summer or Black Friday, by the time you get to Green Monday, or whatever might be this week's phrase,
right?
Like I said, there's less money to spend, and especially when the second surprise I think in this data is that a lot of customers are saying that they're going to rely on debit cards and cash, meaning that's a way that customers stay very close to their budget when you're not going to use credit. Now, of course, younger customers are telling us they're more likely to use credit or tools like buy now, pay later than their older peers. But, there aren't people saying that they're going to use less.
Sure.
They're either using cash and then that small portion that's using credit. But I just think the fact that, the vast majority of customers are using a debit card or cash also says something.
In the headlines there, it said younger consumers plan to use more credit to fund holiday expenses. That was probably the most disturbing result out of looking through all of this. I mean, just not a good idea from the standpoint of they get kind of sucked into these credit arrangements, and they make the introductory interest rate great. They make all these benefits, and little do they know or realize, with the lack of credit experience, that 2 years into this and you've got 28-30% interest rates and a pretty tough situation.
I agree with you completely. The good news is that it was only roughly 1 in 4 of those under 40 that said that they would use more credit. So it's not as if 75% told us that they were going to use more. But still, for that 25%, it's not financially strong behavior to be leveraging credit. Given all of the things that we're talking about consumers are worried about at the moment, inflation, potential unemployment, basically this, I'll call it anticipatory angst that many consumers are living with.
Right.
Inflation is not necessarily increasing at the moment in large numbers. That doesn't mean that the actual price of goods today isn't notably higher than it was 5 years ago. It's not like inflation is reversing itself. It just might not be increasing. And I think consumers feel that innately. And, they're just, again, being forced to watch where their money's going. So the good news is it was only about 23% or just under a quarter that said that they would use credit more in the under 40. But for those customers, it certainly is not advisable financially healthy behaviors.
I'll say this one thing that I'll add to and I'd like to get your input if you're seeing this as well. Through working with people for so many years, I am finding that today's young people, say they're in their 20s, much more responsible than maybe our generation when it comes to spending money. I mean, they've got investment accounts. They're investing and saving on a monthly basis. I mean, just the kind of things that you want to see the future of your country doing.
I would agree with that. The one piece of data I can tell everybody about is that we track the number of consumers that are interested in making an appointment at their branch to go get some form of financial wellness review. Sit down, let's have a talk. And I say at the branch, it can be done online. Some banks offer it online, and some banks actually offer it via video chat. But predominantly when it's happening in person in a branch. Young customers are very interested in making those appointments. They have to have it explained to them what the benefit of the appointment is. But when we look at the institutions that have high rates of those appointments being made, it's predominantly the young consumer that's making them. And, kudos to them, applause all around. There's free services at your bank. I hope you're taking advantage of them.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Jennifer White is my guest today. She is the Senior Director of Banking and Payments Intelligence with J.D. Powers, talking about the results that they found in their latest survey. And it's the Banking and Payments Intelligence Report, actually authored by Jennifer as well. Always like to have Jennifer on because we get a good look at what's going on, kind of beneath all the headlines. And one of the questions that you posed in here, the price of things I buy is increasing faster than my income. And one of the things, and I'm just curious your input on this. One of the things we're seeing is that, and it's just this inflationary environment is just such an odd thing that we've got right now. And like I said, it's just kind of like a slow cancer, but yet it's not. It's only hitting certain pockets of the economy. If people, whether it's happening to them in a big way or not, are consumers getting to where that they believe it's coming, they believe it's here, therefore I'm not going to spend, versus really kind of, maybe instead of just coming to that conclusion, doing your homework and seeing if it is something you can or not afford?
I don't have a direct question in my survey that answers that, but what I can tell you is that as we've been tracking that percent of customers who say that the price of things they buy is increasing faster than their income, that number at the overall level has been pretty constantly high, somewhere around 70% for the whole year. Few months it might tick up, it might come down a little bit, but it's roughly 70% of everyone saying that that's happening. And if we go and we say, well, are they a healthy customer to begin with? It's still over half. If we talk about the most vulnerable among us, it's up as high as 80%. So everyone's feeling it. What I think we're seeing in the data is with that occurring, I mentioned earlier on that consumers aren't telling J.D. Power that they feel all that financially worse off, but yet that type of worry and those type of indicators exist. I like to characterize that as a degree of consumer resilience. They're getting used to the current status quo. They're learning how to be empowered to navigate that. And, that anticipatory angst is there, but if I ask a question like, are you able to pay your bills on time? For the most part, they're still telling us yes. Now, that might mean that they might be paying one bill late, but if I ask the general question, am I paying it on time, people are telling me yes. If I say, do you have any emergency savings, they're still saying yes. Now, that emergency savings, maybe was $1,000 before and it's only $200 now, but they still have it. So we know that things are happening. We can tell. We have plenty of data points outside of J.D. Power that tells us that things are troubling. But consumers are demonstrating this degree of resilience, this I'm ready for it, I'm ready to prepare for it. Now, there's tools and things they could be doing to prepare more, but generally they're telling J.D. Power that, I'm paying attention and I know I have to have a plan.
So now, have y'all factored anything into your research about including credit scores?
We do collect credit score in several studies. This particular body of research just talks about credit worthiness. And consumers are telling us that their credit worthiness is eroding. As, not in dramatic numbers, it's more of a gradual decline. But credit worthiness, the ability to access credit if you need it, beyond what you have today, that is a concern for many many consumers.
What's interesting is, talking about the retailers competing for the consumer dollar, and then you get them into the store and then or online, and they can open up the 5-year no interest or the 2-year no interest with the real high interest rates on these programs. And what's disturbing is that, somebody with a very low credit score can get this just as easy as somebody with a real nice credit score, and really causes a big future problem.
That's certainly happening in the marketplace. I don't really have data on it or consumers' perceptions on that, but anecdotally, that is something we do hear from consumers.
Talk a little bit about identity theft. Have y'all included that into any of your research?
We have a study called our Financial Protection Satisfaction Study, and we ask consumers about how satisfied they are with the way that their bank or their card issuer is protecting their accounts up front. So are you, is your financial partner guiding you through good setup? Are they giving you ongoing updates around information, most common scams? Are they encouraging you to go back and refresh those setups of security settings? How much are they communicating in that space? So we do measure account protection satisfaction. And consumers, the satisfaction in that space is improving slowly as consumers are paying more attention to what needs to happen. The percent of consumers who tell us that they see that their bank has a security center, which is, a general guided experience that, makes it easier for consumers to update those settings. Those types of things are occurring. At the same time, we're also then tracking fraud incidents, and we're tracking satisfaction with the consumer's satisfaction with their financial partner when the bad actor intervenes and fraud occurs. In that space, we do see that fraud incidents is actually holding steady in the last year. The challenge is that more customers, and that's just single incidents, right? That's somebody who said, I had it happen at least once. We are seeing more customers telling us that they're having multiple experiences of fraud within a year. And we are seeing that, there are the proportion of customers who ultimately lose money and or the proportion of customers who maybe had a freeze on their account so they couldn't access money, that those are very troublesome experiences. And those are things that worry customers, and it can be a very quick way to break trust between the consumer and their bank partner or their credit card partner when this occurs.
I did see something on the report that just made me smile a little bit, because I'm thinking about my childhood growing up, is that you actually listed or had some data on layaway plans.
Well, yeah, we definitely see that there is some data on layaway. We have data on buy now, pay later. The consumers that are using those are using them not too frequently, but they are using them as part of their toolkit to make sure that they can afford their holiday spending. What's interesting is that what consumers aren't using, that is also a little old school, is when your bank has the special savings account, or they offer savings buckets that let you set aside money all year round to be able to afford the extra spending here at the holiday season. So too few customers are taking advantage of those types of programs. I think it was less than 1 in 4. And more, it was over 1/3 said, no, I didn't use it, but man, I wish I did.
Yeah, that I remember that in the toy stores they would have ways to you don't get the toy, but you have to pay it up and pay over time, and then when you paid for it, you get it. And I just thought, boy, that would be nice if we had more of that. But that's probably a little bit not in this time period's way to purchase things. Talk a little bit.
Like buy now, pay later. Buy now, pay later to have replaced it, so that you can access immediately and pay later versus paying up till the point of access. So it definitely is a flipped switch.
Now, real quick, how have banks, you've talked a little bit about this, but how have banks tried to help the consumer get prepared for the Christmas shopping season? I mean, I think that's an important message And part of what you guys do there, J.D. Powers, is to get that out that banks want to help them budget, want to help teach them how to do better with money.
Oh, yes. So there's a good chance that your listeners, especially if they're banking with some of the larger national banks, even as a secondary account, have digital tools, either within their mobile app or maybe you have to go online using your computer into online banking, but that help you take a look at how you've been spending your money over time, help you then decide how to set a budget, and then offer you the opportunity to create, I'll call them savings buckets. They can be within your existing savings account, but little vaults that let you track that I want to set aside X number of dollars each month specifically for this purpose, or maybe it's for my next new car, or whatever it might be. And too few consumers are taking advantage of those types of tools that are very often free from your bank partners. And some of them even go so far as over the course of the year to do things like rounding up. If you are spending, $35.50 on your debit card, they'll say, well, do you want to send that extra 50 cents over to savings every time? They've come up with very creative ways to help consumers save, and we just need more consumers to know it's happening and take advantage of it.
And are you seeing banks finally realize that, wow, this is a real opportunity to build relationship and to instill trust, to rebuild trust in a lot of cases?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. Banks need to convey to each one of your listeners the way that they can add value beyond the interest rate that you might earn or beyond being convenient on the corner, right? And the types of things that we were just talking about sure provide a lot of value to very many consumers.
Well, I've been talking to Jennifer White. She's the Senior Director of Banking and Payments Intelligence with J.D. Powers. Jennifer, always great to have you on the program. Merry Christmas to you and your family, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me, and I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season.
This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. As I always want you to know, if you have a question for me, you can always go to the website at www.prudentmoney.com, and there's a link at the top of the front page that says Ask Prudent Money, and go up there, punch that link, and you can ask a question or whatever's on your mind. That's all at the website, www.prudentmoney.com. Well, I got to ask the question as we round up the program today, and that is, have you done your Christmas shopping yet? Where are you in the process of doing your Christmas shopping? And I'll be honest, I'm not quite there, and I know I talked a lot about this in November about getting in the process and getting to it early, because I do think that there's some advantage to doing that. But hope that you have made some headway, because it is all around the corner. And we got a lot of Christmas shopping to do. Hey, this is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. Thanks so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. We are all out of time. Until we do meet again next time, keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.